Right, so when we solve polynomial functions, we are looking for the solutions. Do you have a calculator too?
Solution.
Yep, solutions. All right, your step one will be to make sure your polynomial function is factorable. Step two tells you the methods that we can solve by factoring. We can use the GCF, which we've done before. You can do typical factoring, which we know as our AM method. Difference of squares is dose.
So,
No, we can't solve SOAP. And grouping is the one where we just split. What we're going to do is we are going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for the variable. Whenever we see that word solve, we know it has to be equal to 0. The number of zeros you have should be equal to the highest exponent. We've done this before. Okay, equal to the highest exponent. Y'all ready? Ready as you're gonna be? Alright, number one, GCF. What is the GCF of x cubed minus 3x squared equals to 0? X what? X squared. Okay? Once we get our GCF, I bring it down to the side and then I divide. X cubed divided by, what I'm doing is I'm just dividing that first. X cubed divided by x squared is just x. If I divide the other part, which is negative 3x squared, divided by x squared, I get negative 3. That equals to 0. Okay? Once we get it equal to 0, I'm going to set everything equal to 0. That means my x squared is equal to 0, and x minus 3 is equal to 0. Take a look at the very beginning. What's my highest exponent here? 3 or 2? 3, so that tells me how many answers I should have. I should have 3 answers here. Alright, let's look at my first equation. X squared equals to 0. I don't like x squared. Okay? I need to do the opposite so I can get x by itself. How do I undo square? You take the square root. So if I take the square root of both sides, it's a system that we have to remember. On the left side, my square and my square root cancel out. So I'm left just x equals
0.
If we actually have to write in our radical sign like I did, you have to put plus or minus. Don't forget that. Plus or minus. And what's the square root of 0? 0. So my answer is x equals plus or minus 0.
That's 1 and 3.
Yep, that's 2 answers, right? The plus and the minus. And for my second part that I set equal to 0, if I add each side, I get x is equal to 3. I now have 3 answers. Alright, number 2. Is that equal to 0? No. So I'm going to move this 27x squared to the other side. When I move it to the other side, That was a positive 27. It now becomes a negative because we moved it around the equal sign. You have to have it equal to 0. All right, now what is my GCF? 3x squared, right? You guys remember how to find your GCF, your calculus, right?
Now, number 9.
Math over the number 9, and then you type in 3, comma 27. That should be 3. There is no shortcut to figuring out your exponents. You just need the smallest one. You get it, Eric? So you hit math over the number down to number 9. Did GCD come up?
Yeah.
All right, so GCD is the same as GCF. And then you're going to type in the number 3, comma, which is above the 7, and then 27, and then hit enter. Did you get 3? Okay. So I have 3x squared, and when I divide, 3x to the 4th divided by 3x squared gives me x squared, because my 3's disappeared when I divide them. And then 27x squared divided by 3x squared will give me negative 9. Once you get here, you can do this 2 different ways. I'll show you both ways. I'll do this one a certain way, and I'll do the other ones a different way. What we can do here, like we did in the first problem, is set everything equal to 0. Once you factor it, set everything equal to 0. So we have 3x squared is equal to 0, and then we have x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. All right, look at my first one. 3x squared equals to 0. Well, I'm going to solve for x. So I divide by 3. My 3's cancel out, and I'm left with x squared is equal to 0. This looks familiar, right? Once you get here, you take the square root of each side. My square and my root go away, so I'm left with x equals plus or minus, what is that? Plus or minus 0. There are 2 answers. My other 2 answers, if I want to solve for x, let's say I add 9 to both sides, and I'm left with x squared is equal to 9. I want that x by itself, so I take the square root. My square and my root disappear, so I'm left with x is equal to plus or minus, what's the square root of 9? 3. I have 4 answers there. My biggest exponent here is 4, so it matches up that I need 4 answers. I have 2 here, positive 0, negative 0, positive 3, negative 3. All right, let's look at number 3. This is grouping. All right, grouping tells us that we are going to split it right down the middle. When we split down the middle, my GCF of the left side is x squared. Pull that GCF to the side, and then we divide. X cubed divided by x squared is just x. Negative 2x squared divided by x squared is just minus 2. You do the same thing to the other side. But remember, if we start with a negative, you have to bring that negative out. So because it's negative 9x plus 18, I bring that negative 9 out. And then I divide, and I get x minus 2. And bring down my equal to 0. All right, my GCFs will become a factor. So that's x squared minus 9. My matching parentheses will also become a factor. So that is x minus 2. Alright, so what we did previously was that I just set these equal to 0, right? But let's say we keep going and we dose this. X squared minus 9 will split up to be what? Well, my x squared splits up to be x and x. What's the square root of 9? 3. And what happens to my signs? They're opposite. And then my other factor can come straight down. The difference is I factored it all the way down before I make it equal to 0. So now I have x minus 3 is equal to 0, x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x minus 2 is equal to 0. Everything is equal to 0. Here, x is going to equal what? If I add 3 to each side, I'm going to get positive 3. If I subtract 3 from both sides, I'm going to get negative 3. And if I add 2 to each side, I get x equals positive 2. I still have 3 answers. If we did it the other way, like how we did the square root, we would get plus or minus 3. Same thing, it's just split up differently. Okay. Now we have typical factoring. Let's get number 4. Go ahead and turn the page. Alright, let's do number 5. If you were doing number 4, this has to equal 0 first, so you would have to subtract 0 to the other side. And then it would equal 0. Number 5, same thing. I need to move this positive 2 to the other side. So it's basically like subtracting 2 to each side. So I have 3x to the 4th plus x squared minus 2 is equal to 0. All right, this is my AM method. But I need to swing that 3 over. When I swing it, I multiply it to my last number. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me, what's 3 times negative 2? Negative 6, and adds to give me positive 1. There's a 1 in front of that x squared. Looks like I'll have 2 and 3. What gets the negative?
2.
The negative gets the 2 because negative 2 plus 3 will give me positive 1. So we're on the right track. All right, this is where we go from swinging to grouping. I pull down my first, so 3x to the 4th. I pull down my last, which is negative 2. And the middle, I'm plugging in my factors. So that's negative 2x squared and positive 3x squared. I use x squared because that is what's in the middle. That x squared is in the middle, so we keep it in the middle. I have 4 terms, so I split it up. The GCF of the left side is x squared. And then I divide, and I should get 3x squared minus 2. Just divided that left side. On the right side, my GCF is 1. There's no other factors. And I get 3x squared minus 2. And don't forget you're equal to 0. I know these are long, we're almost there. My GCFs will become a factor. So x squared plus 1. And then my matching parentheses, 3x squared minus 2. Alright, so now let's take them all equal to 0. X squared plus 1 is equal to 0. 3x squared minus 2 is equal to 0. We're solving for x now. So I have x squared is equal to negative 1. I take the square root of both sides. What happens when there is a negative under the radical? Who remembers?
I.
So we have plus or minus I. And the square root of 1 is just 1, so we don't have to write it. You want to write 1I, you can, or you can just write I. My second problem, I add 2 to both sides. So I'm left with 3x squared is equal to 2. I divide by 3. Whew. And I'm left with x squared is equal to 2/3. Don't get freaked out just because you see a fraction. My square cancels out and I'm left with x equals plus or minus root 2 over 3. You can leave it just like that. So there I have 4 answers after all that work. That's a lot. You won't see too many that are that long. All right, let's see number 7. We're going to do it with the shortcut. Shortcut. I move this 3x squared over, so I have x to the 4th minus 3x squared minus 10 is equal to 0. I can go ahead and get into my AM method. I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 10 and add to give me negative 3. What are my factors here? What is it?
One of them's going to be both negative, right?
5 and 2. And nope, the 5 is negative, right? Negative 5 plus 2 gives us negative 3.
Yes.
All right, from here is our shortcut. I'm going to split up my first exponent, so that's going to be x to the 4th will become x squared in each one. And then I'm just going to plug in my factors. Minus 5, positive 2.
You showed us that somewhere.
We just haven't done it with these big exponents, so it looks different. All right, let's set everything equal to 0 and solve it. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I have x squared is equal to 5. I take the square root of each side. I'm going kind of fast here for the sake of time. X equals plus or minus square root of 5. You can leave it just like that. my second problem, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And I'm left with x squared is equal to negative 2. Divide by 2. So x equals, that negative comes out to be what? Nope. Comes out to be I, right? And you can leave the root 2 under. There's no square root for 2. Any questions? Alright, I'm gonna do number 9, you guys gonna do number 10. I'm skipping number 8. For number 9, let's move this 144 over, so we have x to the 4th minus 144 is equal to 0. Because I can dose this, if I split up x to the 4th, how does that split?
2.
X squared in both. And then 144, 12. Opposite signs. From here, we're going to set everything equal to 0. I should have 4 answers with this one. So I add 12. So x squared is equal to 12. I take the square root of each side. So x equals plus or minus, you can leave it like this. I'm not going to make you reduce it right now for this unit. Plus or minus root 12. Yep, so then on the other side, I'm left with x squared equals negative 12. I take the square root of both sides. So x equals, plus or minus, I root 12. Don't forget to bring that negative out. So we have 4 answers. Alright, I want you guys to do number 10. After you do number 10.
After?
Yep. It's the last one. Number 10. You guys dose it? You should have got into dose. So if I take the square root of 81, I get 9. You chop x to the 4th in half, you get x squared. And the square root of 16 is 4. You can keep going from here if you want, right? If anyone keep going, you just set it equal to 0. If you want to keep going, you can here, and that will give you 3x minus 2, 3x plus 2, and then I just can bring down the last piece here. But what I did was I dosed this guy twice. Alright, so now I have 3x minus 2 equals 0, 3x plus 2 equals 0, and 9x squared plus 4 equals 0. Just set everything equal to 0. For this one, you should get x equals 2 over 3. I'm not doing the work up here right now. For this one, you should have x equals negative 2 over 3. And for this one, it's a little more difficult. it you can leave it as a fraction. X equals plus or minus I. No, wait, these are perfect squares, sorry. So bring out that I for the negative, and then you should have 2/3. Because the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 9 is 3. So those are your 4 answers. I know this stuff is hard because there's so many variables and high exponents, but our concepts are not changing. Your homework is homework C, evens or odds. You may go to the bathroom now.
This is all.
Yes.